engines on the island of Sodor love their work. But sometimes there is too much work. That's when Sir Topham Hatt brings new engines to the island. Salty, the dockyard diesel, is one of these engines. He loves to tell tales of the sea. We heaved until the old freighter finally caught the tide. It's good to be useful. Salty is excited about coming to the island of Sodor. Islands are surrounded by the sea. Salty loves the sea. Soon Salty arrived at his new job. Ahoy, mateys! Salty, pride of the seven seas. I'm a new diesel and I'm here to give you some help. Bill and Ben didn't think they needed any help, especially from a diesel. Welcome to Center Island Quarry, Mavis said proudly. Salty looked all around. Everywhere he looked, he saw nothing but rocks. A quarry, he cried. There must be some mistake. I'm a dockyard diesel. You're a quarry diesel now, Mavis said. And she explained that they had to complete an important job for Sir Topham Hatt. Salty was sad that he wouldn't be working by the sea, but he knew what it meant to be a really useful engine, and he set to work at once. Well, Salty said, at least there'd be trucks. You'd better mind them, Mavis said. They can be a bother. He won't last 5 minutes, said Bill. Those trucks will trip him up soon enough, said Ben. But to Bill and Ben's surprise, the truck seemed to give Salty no trouble at all. And the captain yawns. Yo ho ho, and a bucket of prawns, the tiller spins, sang Salty. And the captain yawns, sang the trucks. Thanks to Salty, Sir Topham Hatt's important job was almost done. Bill and Ben were surprised and a little jealous. Here comes Mr. Show-Off, groused Ben. You have to admit he's got a knack with those trucks, said Mavis. Driver says he'll bore the bolts off us with his stories, huffed Bill. But Salty didn't say a word. He didn't come near the shed. Mavis was worried. She rolled alongside and asked him what he was doing on his own. I thought I might catch a bit of sea breeze. You really do miss the sea, don't you? Asked Mavis. Aye, said Salty. I do. But Salty knew the quarry work was important. The next day, he tried to show Bill and Ben his secret with the trucks. I like working to a musical rhythm, he said. And so do the trucks. Why don't you give it a try, me hearties? Here we go, here we go, here we go. No we don't, no we don't, no we don't. But try as they might, Bill and Ben could not move the trucks the way Salty could. Later that day, Sir Topham Hatt came to the quarry. He was surprised to see the job had been completed. Well done, said Sir Topham Hatt. It was Salty, said Mavis. We couldn't have done it without him. Then I've got a bigger job for you, Salty. Aye, aye, sir. What kind of quarry is it? Quarry? Said Sir Topham Hatt. I'm sending you to Brendam Docks. The docks! Salty exclaimed. The docks are hard by the sea. Oh, thank you, sir, he said. This reminds me of a time in Bimini. And Salty was telling stories again. Salty loves Brendam Docks. He gets more work done than any 3 engines and feels really useful. And only the trucks know his secrets. The tiller spins and the captain yawns. engines on Sir Topham Hatt's railway love Brendam Docks. There's always lots of work to keep them busy, and they enjoy seeing new arrivals onto the island of Sodor. An exciting new arrival was an engine Cranky the crane was unloading. It was heavy. "This makes my chain ache," groaned Cranky. "This is Harvey, the crane engine," Sir Topham Hatt said proudly. The other engines thought Harvey looked strange. Harvey was happy to be on the ground. He didn't like dangling from Cranky's arm at all. "These gentlemen are the railway board," Sir Topham Hatt said. "Tomorrow Harvey will give them a demonstration. If it goes well, he will join the railway." "What's a dimmer station?" "Demonstration," said Thomas. "It's when you show off what you can do." "Like when Thomas and I have a race," said Bertie. "Vroom, vroom." That evening, Thomas had just returned from a hard day's work. He saw Harvey parked near the sheds. Harvey could hear the other engines talking about him. This made him sad. "Harvey's different," said Henry. "He doesn't even look like an engine," said Edward. "Surely Sir Topham Hatt won't let him pull coaches," sniffed Gordon. "He's just Cranky on wheels," said James. "He's not taking my mail," said Percy. Thomas felt sorry for Harvey. "Don't worry. Sometimes it takes time to make new friends." But Harvey wasn't sure he wanted to stay where no one wanted him. The next morning, Sir Topham Hatt sent the engines off to a useful day's work. "Maybe my coming here wasn't such a good idea, sir," Harvey chuffed sadly. "Nonsense," said Sir Topham Hatt. "But the engines don't like me. I'm too different." "Different is what makes you special." And that made Harvey feel better. Out on the branch line, Percy was having trouble with the trucks. Faster we go, pull 'em along, don't let 'em slow." "Help!" cried Percy. His driver applied the brakes. But it was too late. He went off the rails at Bulgy's bridge. Luckily, no one was hurt. Bertie arrived and was pleased Percy was all right, but he was also very cross. "You've blocked the road," Bertie snapped. He was worried he wouldn't get the gentlemen of the railway board to the demonstration on time. When Sir Topham Hatt heard the news, he went straight to Harvey. "I need you to rescue one of my engines." "I'll do my best, sir," Harvey said bravely, and he set off immediately. Harvey soon arrived and went to work. In no time, Percy was back on the tracks. The gentlemen of the railway board were very impressed. "That was the best demonstration of all. The gentlemen of the railway board have decided you shall join the railway." "Oh, thank you, sir," said Harvey proudly. That night, Harvey heard the engines talking again. This time it was different. "Well done, Harvey," said Gordon. "Very useful," said James. "You can take my mail," said Percy. "You see," said Thomas, "different can be good." All the engines agreed. "Welcome to the Sodor Railway," they called. Harvey smiled happily. Brendam Docks is one of the busiest dockyards on all the island of Sodor. It's where ships and engines and cranes alike are busy day and night, every day of the year. But poor Cranky the Crane never gets a nap. He never gets to sleep early. He works all the time. And his only company are the gulls that settle on his arm. So Cranky is always cranky. "Ahoy there, Cranky!" cried Salty. "Where have you been?" snapped Cranky. "And a good day to you too, Captain." Bill and Ben arrived for work, full of mischief. "Hurry up," snapped Cranky. "I haven't got all day." "You're no fun," grumbled Bill. "You wouldn't be fun if you were stuck up here," snapped Cranky. "So that's why you're cranky," said Bill. "You're lonely," said Ben. "I'm not," Cranky cranked. "So it's company you be needin'," said Salty. "Reminds me of a lonely old Grand Banks lighthouse keeper." "Not another one of your stories," cried Cranky. "Oh, please, Salty," they chimed. "We haven't heard it." "'Twas in the middle of a wee naughty storm," Salty began. "The likes of which you see once in a lifetime." This made Cranky very cranky. So cranky that he swung his arm around and dropped the pipes onto the tracks instead of the trucks. "Whoops," said Cranky meekly. "You've blown the main now, matey," said Salty. The engines were trapped. "You're gonna get into trouble," sang Bill and Ben. Sir Topham Hatt was in his office being measured for a new suit. When he heard the news, he left immediately for the docks. Sir Topham Hatt knew that any delay at the docks could cause trouble. "You have made a terrible mess, Cranky," he said sternly. "I'm sorry, sir," Cranky whispered. "You engines will have to stay here tonight until Harvey clears up this mess in the morning." Cranky's heart sank as Salty uttered those fateful words. "That reminds me of a story. It was a bitter cold winter. The brave little ship was stuck until the ice melted the next spring. He barely made it round the Cape. After 100 scary days at sea without a scratch, he sailed into port and crashed his bow not 15 feet from my buffers. Luckily, no one was hurt. Except my ears," wailed Cranky. Salty spent all night telling tales of powerful storms, daring rescues, and brave little ships. And when the sun rose, he was still talking. And talking. And talking. "I can't take any more," groaned Cranky. Harvey the crane engine arrived. "Sir Topham Hatt sent me to help clear away this mess," he puffed proudly. Cranky was so pleased the engines would be going soon, he forgot to be cranky. "I'll never misbehave again," he promised, "as long as I don't have to listen to any more of Salty's stories." And after Harvey and the workmen had cleared the wreckage, Cranky worked hard all day. He carefully loaded the trucks, helped speed the engines on their way, and he said please and thank you. "This is new," puffed Thomas, but he had spoken too soon. Cranky couldn't help himself. "It was nice while it lasted," said Percy, and all the engines laughed. But Cranky was still cranky. It was winter on the island of Sodor. The first fogs had begun to roll in from the sea. Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle loved the quiet of Misty Valley, but Thomas must be careful of rocks that sometimes roll onto the tracks. Cyril the fogman has a very important job. He puts detonators on the tracks to warn the engines when there's fog ahead. Ooh, shivered Thomas as he ran over the detonator. That made my axles tingle. Cyril's done his job, said his driver. We better slow down. There's fog ahead. Thank you, Cyril, said Thomas. That night at the sheds, Sir Topham Hatt had something special to show the engines. It was very large and strange looking. What is it? Asked Percy. It's a new invention, a railway foghorn, said Sir Topham Hatt. It warns you when there's fog ahead, like this. That's loud, said Percy. Too loud, huffed James. Sounds like a tugboat to me, grumbled Gordon. Thomas looked worried. What will Cyril do now? He asked. He will be getting a much-needed rest, said Sir Topham Hatt. Besides, this new foghorn will be more reliable. Poor Cyril, whispered Thomas. He's been scrapped. The next day, Percy was cheerfully chuffing through Misty Valley when suddenly... Oh, jeepers, exclaimed Percy. That foghorn is so loud it rattles my dome. And it doesn't even make my axles tingle. Still, we'd better slow down, said his driver. There's fog ahead. The foghorn had been so loud that it made the hillside shake. No sooner was Percy out of sight when one rock fell, then another, and another. Before long, the track was blocked, and the foghorn was crushed. Not far away, Thomas was happily puffing right on time. I can't see a thing, said Thomas. And then, before he could even think of anything else, bust my buffers, cried Thomas. What happened to the foghorn? I don't know, said his driver, but at least nobody's been hurt. Toby will be coming down the line any minute, said his fireman. If there's no fog warning, said Thomas, he'll run into us. Leave it to me, called a voice from the fog. It's Cyril, said Thomas. I hope he's in time. Toby and his coach Henrietta were chuffing along. Toby was looking forward to a well-earned drink at the next station when... Fog detonators, puffed Toby. There must be fog ahead, said his driver. We better slow down. And just around the next bend, with his axle still tingling, Toby was very glad they did. Otherwise, they would have crashed into Thomas's wreck. Soon the tracks were cleared and Thomas was back on the rails. If it hadn't been for Cyril, said Thomas, Toby might have had a worse accident than me. Instead of replacing Cyril with the foghorn, said Sir Topham Hatt, we'll replace the foghorn with Cyril. You're clearly more reliable. Thank you, sir, said Cyril. And thank you, said Toby. New inventions are all very well, said Thomas. But they don't make my axles tingle, said Percy. helicopter loves flying. Up in the bright blue sky, over the island of Sodor, he looks out for anyone in distress. Sometimes he delivers the mail. This makes Percy very cross. The mail run is done. Is there any more? I can deliver it for you in a jiff. That's what friends are for. Delivering the mail is an engine's job, said Percy grumpily. Percy has many jobs, but carrying the mail is his favorite. It makes him feel really useful. The next morning, Percy was happily pulling the mail train. Must be on time, he chuffed. But up ahead, there was trouble with the signal box. It was broken. The signal engineers did not know how long it would take to fix. Percy had to stop. It's not safe for engines to run without signals. But Percy was very upset. I'm going to be late, he cried. And it's not even my fault. Sir Topham Hatt was in his office enjoying his toast and marmalade when he heard the news. Percy is stuck at a broken signal? Then Harold must take the mail. Poor Percy was still waiting, and still upset. The last time he was held up, the mail was given to Harold. It made me feel like a really useless engine, he sighed. Well, the mail must arrive on time, said his driver. Just then they heard a familiar sound coming from above. Hello, said Harold. Sir Topham Hatt says you need my help. That's what friends are for. Oh no, cried Percy. But Sir Topham Hatt had made up his mind. There was nothing Percy could do. Percy's driver helped load the mail bags into Harold's cargo net. Maybe we should take the mail bags a few at a time, said Harold's pilot. They're very heavy. I'd have to make too many trips. Then I'd be as slow as Percy. And so they loaded all the mail into Harold's net at once. And the engineer continued to work on the signal. Just as they finished loading, a signal engineer cried out. It's fixed, he said. Wait, Harold, shouted Percy. I'm ready to go. But it was too late. Harold had already taken off. Percy watched the mail disappear. He was upset. But then they all heard a strange sound. Watch out for those trees, Harold, cried his pilot. My net is too heavy, wailed Harold. Harold is in trouble, Percy cried. We must try to help him. Are you all right? Called Percy. Just get someone to pull me out of this haystack, sputtered Harold. And Percy did, as fast as he could. The next day, Harold's engine was fixed and he was flying again. Percy was very pleased to see him. Want to take the mail, Harold? Percy teased. I'll stand by with the rescue team. All the engines tooted, and Harold hovered so low that only Percy could hear. Thanks for getting help to pull me out of that haystack, my friend, he said. That's all right, said Percy. That's what friends are for. Thomas the Tank Engine enjoys taking specials. Today he was bringing a special to Brendam Docks. His load was to go onto a cargo ship. The ship was scheduled to depart at sundown. Thomas had to get to the docks before then. But the load was very heavy. So Thomas puffed as hard as he could. He pulled so hard, he broke his coupling rods. He wasn't going anywhere. "Oh dear," Thomas said, "I'll be late." His driver saw an old shed near the track. "If there's a telephone in there, I could call for help," he said. "Hurry," said Thomas, "and be careful. It looks spooky." Then a voice boomed from inside the shed. "Do you mind? I'm trying to sleep." Thomas hoped it wasn't a ghost. Then his driver appeared. "Is it a ghost?" asked Thomas nervously. "It's a surprise," his driver teased. Then the fireman took some of Thomas's coal and headed off to the shed. "She could get us to the fitter's yard," his driver said. "If her boiler holds," added the fireman anxiously. What kind of surprise is that? Thomas wondered. "Thomas, meet Elizabeth," said his driver. At last the doors opened and out chuffed a dirty, grimy steam truck. "So you're the little puffer that's broken down," she sniffed. Thomas was cross. "And you're just an old steam truck," he retorted. "That would be vintage steam truck," snapped Elizabeth. "And I haven't much time to get to your coupling rods." The driver was concerned. Elizabeth was making awful grinding sounds. "She's not built for hills," he said anxiously. "You're losing steam," he called. "Just catching my breath," Elizabeth chuffed. And finally she made it. When Elizabeth returned with Thomas's coupling rods, she was pleased with herself. "And next time don't be so careless," she scolded. Thomas thought Elizabeth was the rudest truck he'd ever met, but he was very happy to get his new coupling rods. Thomas made it to the docks just in time. "What took you so long?" said Sir Topham Hatt. Thomas told him about his broken coupling rods. He wanted to tell him how rude Elizabeth had been when she rolled up. "Oh, it's you," said Elizabeth, looking down at Sir Topham Hatt. "Have you learned to drive properly yet?" "She's in trouble now," said Thomas to his driver. "Elizabeth," said Sir Topham Hatt fondly. "My first truck. I thought you had been lost." They were old friends. It was too much for Thomas. Then Elizabeth told Sir Topham Hatt how she'd been left in the shed for years. Sir Topham Hatt was so pleased Elizabeth had been found. He asked Jem Cole to restore her to her original beauty. And soon Elizabeth had a rich, dark color and gleaming coachworks. "You're the grandest truck in the whole railway," Sir Topham Hatt said proudly. "I know," said Elizabeth even more proudly. And Thomas had to agree. She did look grand.
telling us so. He is a splendid fellow, but he really is quite vain. Who do we mean? You got it! James! Take a look who's coming down the track. Make way for James, hooray for James. Shiny, shiny paint with the jet black stack. Make way for James, hooray for James. What is for certain and we really should note? It's indisputable, but let's take a vote. He's a really splendid engine with a bright red coat. He can brag all day, how fast he goes, how good he looks, he's such a pose. But what about the time he got covered in mud? Oh, what a dope, what a dud. But up and down the line, you hear the others say, despite his vanity, he really is okay. Dependable, reliable, and seldom late. We all think James is great. Speeding down the line like a lightning flash. Make way for James, hooray for James. Hang on to your hat as he whooshes past. Make way for James, hooray for James. He really knows how to stage a show. You gotta stand back and watch him go. He's a really splendid engine with a bright red coat. Look who's swanning it down the track. Make way for James, hooray for James. He never looks up, he never looks back. Make way for James, hooray for James. Attack conceited and really quite vain. He knows we love him just the same. Take a look who's coming down the track. Make way for James, hooray for James. Shiny, shiny paint with the jet black stack. Make way for James, hooray for James. He's the really splendid engine. Shiny, shiny engine. He's the really splendid engine.
Yep.
That's our James.
That's James.